Adam Schefter from the Mothership, the peripatetic reporter. Always busy, and busy this weekend with Jay Cutler back in the NFL. What was plan, is it C, I guess, after Cutler when Tannehill went down, or was it plan B?
Well, you know, Dan, there's been a lot of discussion about the options beyond Jay Cutler, but I think the truth of the matter is that they were so focused on getting Jay Cutler that they never got to option B, C, D, E, F, whatever option you want to go to. I think the name Brock Osweiler came up in that building, and I was told last week that Cleveland really was not interested in parting ways with him. I was told the name Teddy Bridgewater came up, and I was told Minnesota would never part with him. He's the golden child there. I was told the name Blaine Gabbert came up, but again, in Arizona, he looked very strong in his preseason debut. But they never got to where they had to consider strongly any other option, whether it was Brock Osweiler or Tim Tebow or Johnny Manziel, or you bring up the name. It doesn't matter who. They were focused on getting Jay Cutler, and they got their guy in the end.
Why are they bringing in Cutler for 1 year? And give me best case, worst case scenario of how you think this can play out.
Well, it's 1 year on a one-year contract. And listen, I think initially the first thought was, well, the two sides could talk about a 3-year deal. But the truth of the matter, Dan, is that it really didn't matter on a 3-year deal because it was going to be constructed as a 1-year deal with an option bonus if they went beyond 1 year that the team would have the right to pick up or not pick up. So if Jay Cutler goes in and plays well this year, the Dolphins then picked it up. He makes money. If he doesn't play well, they're going to release him anyway. So basically, he was going to be on a 1-year deal, which is why the two sides decided to construct a 1-year deal, because if he plays well, they are not financially obligated to Ryan Tannehill beyond this year. So now they're going to pay him $17 million this year, but they're out from under him financially if Jay Cutler works out next year. If not, then obviously they could turn back to Ryan Tannehill, depending on how he's recovering from his knee injury.
Yeah.
And so Cutler, best case scenario, goes into Miami, thrives under Adam Gase's system, as he has in the past, and they decide to re-sign him and bring him back as Miami's quarterback of the future. Worst case, doesn't play well, injured, struggles, you come up with it, and basically it's a 1-year deal. They're one and done, and they go on to their other options, whether that's Ryan Tannehill or somebody else.
Yeah, I guess the concern I had is I think Matt Moore is just as good as Cutler is, and you're bringing in Cutler, and the danger is, believe it or not, if he plays well, yes, you get rid of Tannehill, but now I got a 35-year-old Jay Cutler in there, and where's my future? You got to have a franchise quarterback, and you're sort of stuck in that 7-9 to 9-7 range, and nobody wants to be in that territory.
But, Dan, they were there anyway with Ryan Tannehill and Matt Moore. Do we know that Ryan Tannehill is a surefire playoff-bound? We don't know that, do we?
No.
So they're there anyway.
Yeah.
So they took basically the best-case scenario in the situation that they were in with Ryan Tannehill having the knee injury, and I believe he's going to opt for the knee surgery. I believe he's going to be out for the year. And so that's fine. You think Matt Moore's better? Maybe he is. But the fact of the matter is they were going to need another quarterback, and Adam Gase believes in Jay Cutler, knows him. You didn't hit on the big question. What's Fox going to do without Jay Cutler now?
I said Tannehill deserves that job.
Or Kaepernick. Give Colin Kaepernick the shot in the booth, right?
And he'd finally get a job. That's what he needs. He finally gets a job. And I know people are trying to make this into a Colin Kaepernick story. And I said this isn't. Baltimore, to me, is more of a Kaepernick story than Miami, because Miami's not the right place, and Adam Gase is not the right coach for him. And certainly the Fidel Castro T-shirt, Miami, Cuban base, that was not going to work out.
Agree. And I think the Baltimore case was very interesting because I think the coaching staff really wanted him. And I think there was a lot of support for him. And somewhere along the way, for whatever reason that was, they opted to go against him. But that was gaining momentum at one point. It quickly stopped. And you are exactly right. That was an option. Miami never really turned into an option for Kaepernick. It never really evolved in that way. And so here we are. It kind of drives me crazy. I guess it's the way of the world. Colin Kaepernick now gets linked to every single quarterback question. Yes. It's just unbelievable.
Did Romo get any calls?
Who? Say that one more time, then.
Did Romo get a call? Has he gotten any calls?
Not to my knowledge, not yet. And I think that if you're Tony Romo is the Dallas Cowboys break the glass emergency plan if anything were to happen to Dak.
That's it.
I think that's the Tony Romo plan to me. Other than that, he's with Jim Nantz.
If Dak Prescott got hurt in the preseason, finish that.
I think they have to call Tony Romo. I mean, to me, that's the first call you make. When the Cowboys get in that room, the way the Dolphins got in that room last year, the room where it happens, and you're making the decision about which quarterback to bring in, and you're the Dallas Cowboys in that spot, are you counting or believing in Kellen Moore to save your season? I don't think so. Are you counting on another quarterback to save your season? I don't think so. So, to me, yeah, that's, again, Tony Romo's the break-the-glass emergency for Dallas, if anything were to happen. But Dak has been great. He's been durable, and hopefully that's not an issue for them.
We're talking to Adam Schefter from the Mothership. Tom Brady says it's basically nobody's business about his concussions. And Tom must be affected by these concussions to say something stupid like that. How does the league react? Do they react at all to what Brady had to say? Since there is an injury report that you have to, was he lying to the team? Did the team know about it? Did they not put him on the injured list, list it as a concussion? So is there any fallout to this?
You know, I short of them hiring Ted Wells again to investigate Brady, I don't know what they can do. Like, they looked into it. He was not down on the injury report as having sustained a concussion or head injury. People have gone through the tapes and can't find it. You know, it's a very difficult injury sometimes to identify, and players have done a great job of concealing it. And I think that's been part of the change in the culture surrounding that injury. 10 years ago, people wore concussions as a badge of honor and strength. I got dinged, and I'm going back in the game. Ding, ding. And now that's not the case. Now it's not great ever when a player is concealing a concussion. But I think all of us can look at all the comments that were made and agree that we believe that at some point last year, at the very least, Tom Brady suffered a concussion. Where, when, we don't know. How it happened, don't know. What was on the injury report? It doesn't appear to be. So you can't prove it. The league went back and looked at it and didn't see anything. So it's one of those issues that, to me, raises awareness, but there's not anything that can be done.
A couple other things coming off the Hall of Fame. The fact that we saw Terrell Davis get in, so a briefer career, but brilliant during that brief career. Are the voters kind of turning the corner here, or was this just an aberration of looking at Terrell Davis and a guy who gained 2,000 yards and they won Super Bowls here to get into the Hall of Fame?
Dan, I was honored to be a voter for 6 years. And the one thing that I learned is that there are certain candidates that you can't explain that gain momentum in certain years. Terrell Davis, I believe, had been on the ballot a couple of other times at the very least and didn't get close. What happened in those 2 years that made him a Hall of Famer that he wasn't those other years? Why is it that a senior guy can get in? Yeah. Kenny Easley can get in all these years later. So all of a sudden in 2017 he's a Hall of Famer, but in 2007 he wasn't? What changed? So what I've learned is that, again, certain guys gain certain momentum in certain years, and it is a political process. And you should not be fooled by it any other way. There are certain players that get presented by certain voters who are more persuasive and powerful than other presenters. And in many instances, a candidacy is bolstered by who the presenter is and the respect that that guy has in that room. And Terrell Davis, who I believe was presented by Jeff Legwold of ESPN.com this year, who does a tremendous job, did a great job of pushing forth his candidacy and gathering the pertinent information, and he got him in. I don't think that because Terrell Davis got in, all of a sudden you say, oh, now player X, and I know there have been some other examples, I'm drawing a blank on it right now, who played only 3 years but thrived, should get into the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's just not how it works. Voters are not sitting around saying, well, we let in Terrell Davis, so let's let in this other player who had a shortened, aborted career due to injuries because it didn't work out. It's not how – I don't think Terrell Davis's entry into Canton influences the next guy, in my mind.
But can I look at Jimmie Johnson the same way we look at Terrell Davis?
Well, in a certain way you can. What, he coached 5 seasons. He won 2 Super Bowls.
And then hand-delivered a third one for Barry Switzer. But I don't know if I know we look at longevity with coaches, but is Jimmie Johnson a Hall of Fame coach?
Well, he's a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, whether he's in there or not, he's a Hall of Fame type of coach in my mind. The question is whether the voters are going to allow him to gain entry into there. And again, I think, listen, a player has his coaching career, or his player like Terrell Davis has his career cut off because of a physical injury that he suffered, not his choice. Jimmie Johnson made the choice not to coach again. And I know it doesn't sound like much, but there's a difference between a coach who's involved for 5 years and a player who's involved for 5 years. It's just a subtle thing. Jimmie Johnson, to me, is one of the great coaches. When I was in that room, the one thing that always stood out to me is they would say, this is the Hall of Fame. Can you write the history of the game without this particular individual? And in the case of Terrell Davis, you could argue that he had an NFL MVP, a Super Bowl MVP, a 2,000-yard season. He has taken part in a number of historical events over time. And to me, Jimmie Johnson's a part of NFL history. As you mentioned, the 2 Super Bowls and teeing it up for Barry Switzer to win a third. To me, he belongs in, but I think it's a different case looking at a coach and a player.
Adam, NFL Live at 1:30 Eastern every weekday on ESPN. Also, he has a podcast, Know Them from Adam. Last week, he interviewed Hall of Famers Jerry Jones and Terrell Davis. Can we cap how long the speeches are? Have they ever thought of just doing the Academy Awards music there? That you have to submit your speech. Let's see how long it is. And then they tell you it has to, we got 20 minutes here.
There is so much that was so wrong about what happened Saturday night. Okay, the Gettysburg Address was delivered in 2 minutes and 48 seconds, I believe. You're telling me that you can't get a Hall of Fame speech in and pay your respects to the people that deserve it in the course of, say, 20 minutes? I know Peter King this morning espoused 22 minutes. I was thinking on Saturday night when I discussed this issue with some people, 20 minutes. Everybody gets 20 minutes. And then the lights go on and the curtain comes down, and that's it. That's it. It's not fair to say Kurt Warner, the 7th candidate that night, to step up to an arena that's emptying out because people are done. We're not sitting in these chairs for 5 hours. Okay? It's just not fair. It's not right. It goes on and on. I mean, as a guy who has written and then edited my own work for 27 years, I'm listening to these speeches, and there were some great, moving, incredible passages, touching.
Yep.
I got emotionally worked up. But there were other parts like, this is not necessary. This is not necessary. And it just creates it to where it's too long. There was one Hall of Famer that I spoke to on Saturday night who told me, I am never going to another one of these ceremonies until they put a time limit on these guys and cut it off at a certain point.
How about 10 minutes, and then you get 5 minutes per Super Bowl win after that?
Well, I like that, Dan. That works for me. I mean,
I sat through one, Adam, years ago when I wasn't even working in the business, and I said I would never do that again. It was interminable, and I just said, tell these guys what's good entertainment because they don't know. Give me one great story. Thank a couple of people. And, make it an entertaining speech, not something that drags on and it loses its momentum and loses the feel.
It's the most emotional moment of their life. It's the penultimate time of their careers. They get to pay tribute, but it's just too much. Let me tell you something. When Steve Young's father, Britt, presented him and spoke for roughly 30 minutes, that ended the presenting speeches as we know it. They revised it to where the presenters are now interviewed and they cut up NFL films and interview tape and they play the presenter in a series of bites over the course of about 60 seconds, and it works great. It's enough. And in the case of the people who are going into the hall, there's enough there. Something must be done there to cut them off, and they've improved it all along the way. This is a ceremony that used to be done in the middle of the afternoon, okay?
Yeah.
The Hall of Famers are on these plastic chairs. You got these big older men who are miserably uncomfortable sitting in the Canton sun. They moved it to the night. I noticed on Saturday night they have these big leather chairs for the Hall of Famers. They're improving it, and there still are more improvements to be made in terms of saying nobody is talking beyond 20 minutes. I don't care who you are. If Jesus came back to earth, he doesn't get more than 20 minutes that night. Sorry.
I don't know. JC's going to get he had a great run, man. I got to give him 25.
He did, but Dan, 20 minutes, okay? Otherwise, all the other Hall of Famers are going to be turned off. And like that one told me, he ain't going back, even for JC.
Man, that's tough. You know, what they should say is, for more on my career, go into the Hall of Fame where my bio is, or something. Like they could do this in a tactful way. All right, I have to go here.
You know, one other thing. How about this? They scroll the Hall of Fame guy who gets elected. He gives a list of 100 people to thank to ESPN, to NFL, to scroll across the bottom of the speech.
I like that.
Terrell Davis would like to thank Frank White, Adam Schefter, Dan Patrick, Neil Schwartz, on and on and on. So all the names are rolling, and then give your speech.
I like it.
Thank you, Dan.
If I make the Hall of Fame, my scroll will have a shout-out to you.
And vice versa. I am scrolling Dan Patrick in the bottom of my speech as well.
Thank you. Adam Schefter, NFL Live. Thank you, Adam.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.